Hello, everybody. It's Sunday night. The name of the show is Intuitive Inc., and I am Servette Hassan. We have a really interesting show tonight, and it's Annie Mattingley that's calling in right now. And Annie is on the phone as we speak live here. Hello, Annie. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can.
And I hear you perfectly right now, so it must have been meant to be. She tried earlier, all you wonderful, beautiful souls out there, and we couldn't hear each other. And now she calls back, and it's perfect. So here we go.
For our audience.
Yeah, just for our audience. Then the show tonight, just all I had time to say is it's going to be an amazing show, and I know it will be. Our guest tonight is Annie Mattingley. Annie has an MA in Consciousness Studies, which in itself has got to be like something I wanted to ask about, and I will. But she's also worked as a teacher and a magazine publisher and a hospice volunteer. But she's written a book that I found really, truly fascinating, The After Death Chronicles, True Stories of Comfort, Guidance, and Wisdom from Beyond the Veil. Now, I've read a bazillion books on the subject of people connecting from the other side, as they call it, which is kind of an oxymoron. But Annie puts this in a really real way. And I think it's because she's dealt with it on a very personal level, but then has made it her life's work to go out and research this. So I love this book, and I highly recommend it. So welcome, Annie. I appreciate you being with me tonight. Thank you.
Well, I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. Okay. The reason I said that you put this on a very personal level, you really went about this in a very not scientific way, but because you don't get into the science of it because you can't really, but you really went deep on a very personal level. So why don't you tell the audience how this started, where this all came from?
Well, it all started from the hardest and most difficult and painful moments of my life, because just about 7.5 years ago, my daughter Randy died, and I was still deeply grieving when a few weeks later, very much to my surprise, one morning I was awakened by her presence, and I was shocked and delighted and in awe of the whole thing. And then she began to visit me regularly, and we held conversations, exchanges, back and forth every morning. Wow. So many that I had to put a notebook beside my bed so I could take notes on what we talked about. And I thought that this was an incredibly unique experience. Mm-hmm. And then I began very quietly, kind of cautiously, to tell a few people that I was having visitations. And each time, almost every time, someone either told me their own experience or an experience that had happened to someone close to them. Not always verbal like mine. Some were visions, some were olfactory, some were dreams, but powerful, transformative experiences with someone who had died that they loved. And I was astonished. I had no idea that there were so many people having experiences like this, and I wanted to know why we weren't talking about it, why these were some of these people who told me these stories I had known for a long time, but they had never told me these stories before. And so I became fascinated, and then I began interviewing people after a period of time, and that's how the whole thing started. I call it life's terrible wonder, because this painful, awful experience was transformative and became something completely satisfying and wonderful for me.
Right. That life works that way, doesn't it? There are no accidents. So when your daughter, first of all, how old was your daughter Randy when she passed from the earth?
47. She was 47.
47. So at that point, were you thinking about compiling this for a book, or was that an afterthought after having had so many people open up to you about the
subject. It was an
afterthought. Right.
It was definitely an afterthought, yeah.
Right, because I think in the book, well, I read the book, and it's excellent, and you talk about how you thought it could help, but it wasn't something you set out to do. It was something that just came naturally from so many people contacting you and telling their stories.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
yeah, I mean, at first I just interviewed the people that I knew because I was still grieving and busy with all the things that happen after a death, and then I started receiving phone calls and emails from people I didn't know who were being referred to me, and I put up some flyers, and it could have been an endless project. I could still be interviewing, years later, mm-hmm. because I still hear stories regularly, in a more informal way.
Mm-hmm. Well, would you consider that? I mean, after having heard so many more stories than you could put, because you have like hundreds of stories in this book already.
I do.
Yeah. So at what point, okay, first of all, how did you choose the stories that went in the book and the ones that didn't?
Well, partly it was for variety because there's
mm-hmm.
so many ways that people come, and partly it was because some stories were more interesting than others, or if there were stories that I heard that seemed pretty replicative of other stories that I'd heard, and I didn't see a purpose in including mm-hmm. all of those. And right. Initially I tried to include them all because I wanted to honor all these people who had so generously shared with me, but that turned out not to be it wouldn't have been as good a book if I had done that.
I agree, because you really do touch on the very many different ways that you can be communicated with. And it mm-hmm. is interesting because I remember reading, I read it last week, so the exact details I can't tell you, but there was a woman whose husband died, and he wanted sex or something. She's like, wait, forget it.
But that one is just for comic relief.
But it was good. Do you know what I mean? It was like, I went, oh, good. You know what I mean? That's interesting to me that happened, and that doorbells ring and things, uh-huh. certain things that happen that you tell a story about that in your book as well. Mm-hmm. that happens. So I have a question for you though. For mm-hmm. one, the first question is, how do you know these people are above board and that they're not just because they're having gone through, even yourself, having gone through something as traumatic as losing a child? I can't even imagine that. I don't even know if I could get through that. Where do you know it's real and not something that's coming from their own psychological problems?
Well, there was only I'll start with the beginning of that, which is basically it's a gut response.
Right.
Some of it I just kind of feel it, mm-hmm. and I also have a thing that happens to me, and it happens to it's a particular way of understanding life on an intuitive level where I feel things come up my spine. It's like a shot of goosebumps up my spine, mm-hmm. that I often feel when someone is telling me something that might be hard to believe, but that is true, and it tells me that it's true. Right. And also there is a lovely, people who shared these stories there have been deep emotions, but there's also been a deep sense of integrity in them, that they want to share these stories because mm-hmm. they want others to feel as comforted as they have been. There was people who shared with me really wanted to participate in this project. Mm. Other than that, I don't know. None of it's provable.
Well, no, I know. And I call them God bumps. I think you do too, yeah. when you get that feeling that you kind of, and I've had something very similar in a very different way, but I dreamt, first of all, my husband died 23 years ago now, but I dreamt it 6 months before he died, and I didn't actually know he died. I just dreamt that I was standing alone in the rain, and I was thinking, how can I live without him? How can I live without him? And I thought he was going to cheat on me and leave me.
Oh, wow.
And 6 months later, he passed away. Then about years later, maybe a year or two later, my daughter was only 5 at the time. I was crossing a street with the dogs, and a car stopped like within half an inch of me. Like I could feel the heat of the engine of that SUV, and the car stopped like boom right there. And I heard him say to me, "It's not your time." And I had never had any contact with him before that. None. So you know what I gotta say, I can't prove any of this. I get where you're but when that happens to you, you do step back and go, where do we go when we die? And is there another,
It does bring up the big questions.
Exactly, because I know you can't really kill consciousness. And that's where your book goes, because honestly and truly, I don't think any of us do die. I think we just switch channels. Exactly. Maybe you're not watching Channel 7 right now. Maybe you're watching CNN or whatever. But Channel 7 didn't go away. It just isn't in your peripheral vision or your hearing or your seeing at the moment. But if you switch back to that channel, that's kind of how I look at it. Is that how you see it?
It's one way. There are probably endless metaphors for how this is, but certainly nothing goes away. Our bodies change form when we die. They go back into the earth or up into the air if they're ashes, but they don't go away. You can't. It's like we can't really get rid of anything in a certain way.
Right. I mean, when you find out you really don't die, it's a little like, what? It can be a little different. But I honestly, what do you think then about reincarnation? Do you think anybody comes back and then they're not communicating from the other, quote unquote, other side? Because I do think that's an oxymoron. I don't think there is another side. I think there's just different.
Right. Or like right here.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm not sure how. I really make sort of semi-educated guesses about how the reincarnation part works and with the contact part, because people have said to me, well, I don't have verbal communication much with my daughter anymore after 7 years, but I still feel her presence sometimes. But who's to say that all right, I'm just going to make something up here.
Go ahead.
What if spirit or soul or essence, whatever you want to call it, weighs 100 pounds, and we go to incarnate as me, Annie Mattingley, and 30 pounds comes down here, and some stays up there, wherever up there is, but not embodied, and then some. If I die, maybe I can still communicate with that remaining percentage that's not embodied, even if I incarnate into another body. I think there are a lot of possibilities. It talks about parallel universes or the possibility of being embodied in two places at the same time. I don't know.
We know what
tend to limit these things and think.
No, and you can't prove any of these things either. But once you've gone through, I couldn't prove to anybody that Jim said that to me when that car missed me and didn't kill me, because if it hit me, I would be dead. But I know it, I feel it, and I know in my heart that I heard him. I know his voice. I know exactly how he would say that. I never heard from him again. But I do think that there are different, I do think that everything is just happening now anyway. Do you know what I mean? There's maybe different dimensions, different parallel, whatever you want to call it. But I don't think we can quite put our finger on that, because I think it would probably blow our minds if we could.
Exactly. My mind can't really contain the possibility that maybe I could be incarnating in 1,000 ways right now. That's sort of too big for me to really wrap myself around.
Right, because it's hard enough just to figure out how to pay the bills tomorrow,
Yeah.
let alone, you know, exactly, you know what I mean? It's like,
yes.
But I do think that I don't think you can kill consciousness. It's energy, and energy doesn't die. So it goes somewhere, you know? And I do think if they are communicating, there's a reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when your daughter communicated with you, when you first started this, before you actually put it out there to do research on this and get information from other people about the same kind of thing, did she help you? Was there a reason for that in your mind or her mind? Did she talk to you about that?
Well, she did, because I tried to direct our communication so that she would tell me all about the afterlife, and she didn't want to go there. And I couldn't push it because I was asking her all kinds of questions, and when I would, she would just leave. And finally I said, well, isn't that, oh no, she said, that is not what this is about. And I said, well, then what is it about? And she said, well, it's about healing our relationship because there were some bumps and grinds between us as mother and daughter. Mm-hmm. And it is about her daughter, who was in her late teens when Randy died. So there was some watching over there. And she was not, so that's, and then I guess by that point, this research was starting. So I'm a little ahead of myself there because she said it was about the book too. So,
okay. So she knew you would do a book and help other people with experience.
She really wanted me to do this book. I was pretty cautious at first because I was grieving.
Right. Mm-hmm. Did it help? Was it cathartic to write the book?
Very.
Yeah.
Very.
So, how did you pick the people then that went into the book? Well,
most of the people that I talked to have at least some mention in the book. Mm-hmm. There were only a few who were left out because of repetition, or a couple of people I talked to were difficult. Not many, but a couple. Sometimes their stories felt incomplete or troubled in some way, and I just left them out. Mm-hmm. It wasn't difficult to choose.
Right. Well, part of it too is you've broken the book down into different ways that people on the other, I hate to say other side. Is there another way to put that? People who are...
Well, I like to say people who are no longer in bodies.
There you go.
It's a long phrase.
Okay, that's a good one. That's a good one. People that there's different ways of communicating. So you broke it down into that. And that I felt that was a really good way to structure the book. And I found it fascinating because it isn't, I heard Jim when he did that for me. And I've never heard anyone else do that, but I have felt presences at certain times. Mm-hmm. So there are different ways that people are going to do that, communicate. And I find it fascinating. Like there was one instance in your book where that somebody would ring the doorbell,
Right.
So you picked, I think, 12 different kinds of ways that they communicate?
Around that number. I don't remember exactly. Yeah. And that covered most of what I had heard then, but I've heard different ways since. So I think the ways are almost endless.
So is it uncommon for people to have dreams about people that have passed? What's the
Dreams
most common?
Are the most common.
That's what I thought. That's why I asked that. But okay.
And those dreams are particularly vivid and basically unforgettable, so that someone can tell all the specifics of a dream years later because it's so strong in them. Yeah,
and I think maybe that's a kind of more less intrusive way to bring a message through, I think, is through a dream.
Well, I think that there are many people who are pretty cautious about the idea of seeing a vision or hearing a voice. They're afraid that somebody might think that's a hallucination. Mm-hmm. They don't trust those kinds of experiences necessarily as well as they trust their dreams. But if somebody's used to remembering their dreams, that's a pretty direct way for a deceased loved one to come visit.
Mm-hmm. It's another example with me that I just thought of, and I haven't thought of it in 100 years. And I'm not that old, but I remember I was born in Pakistan, and I grew up in London and Montreal and California. So I'm British citizen, Canadian. I've been all over the world, but I remember my mother I think. Wasn't in London. Oh, it was in London. I think it was in London because I was really little. I was maybe 3, and I woke up with a blanket on me, and my mother said to me, "Oh, you put the blanket." It got really cold that night, and it does there. It gets foggy and cold. And she said, "Oh, you put the blanket on you in the night." I was worried because I guess she got up to make sure I was warm. And I said, "Oh, no, Grandma did it." And Grandma's been dead I never met my grandmother.
Uh-huh.
And I specifically said that to her.
That's wonderful.
And
the child's not afraid to say that.
Yeah.
Or is less afraid.
Mm-hmm. And
we sometimes stop that by telling them that can't possibly be true. What did your mother say?
My mother said, well, that would be like her.
Ah, lovely.
She loved you. Because in Pakistan in 1958, when I was born, they used to bury baby girls alive. And they named me Treasure. My name in English means treasure because they didn't bury me. And she was very well aware of that because my mother already had three boys. And she was married at 12. This is another book and another story. So we don't want to get into that. But so for her to say that was really remarkable. Because she knew that her mother had held me when I was born, but then died before I ever knew her, you know.
Wow.
And loved me because they kept me, because it's not up to the mother, it's up to the father, right? The mother has no say. She was 12 when she started having, so she knew something and never. She just said that would be like her to do that. Mm-hmm. Amazing, huh?
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
And you've heard stories like this and compiled it together because really, honestly, this does, because this is something you don't want to talk about. You know, it's almost like a taboo in a way, you know, right?
In our culture, it is.
Yeah.
It is often taboo. Mm-hmm. Although... I think because I had an experience and because when somebody asks me a question about this, I always begin with that. Mm-hmm. People will open up with me very easily, but I've heard a lot of people say, I've never told anyone this before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
They're afraid they're not believed.
Right. Right. But and the fact that your daughter came to, because I can't imagine anything like that. I don't know if I could even live through that. And you did. And then almost immediately she's there to give you solace, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, there's something to that because I think, plus, I think in it certainly reduces the fear of death as well because a lot of people don't know, you know, they're afraid that maybe that's not true. We don't go on. And I've heard people tell me that they've never heard anything from anybody that's gone on before them. And so they're not sure. And then they're afraid, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's pretty universal, not necessarily totally so, but mostly that people are afraid of dying. And I have to say that is one of the things that's transformed with me in this 7.5 years. It went from, it was a gradual, I wasn't terrified of death to begin with. I never thought that consciousness just stopped.
Right.
But still, I had my stuff about it. But over this time, hearing story after story after story after story, I'm like, what is there to be afraid of? I'm stepping into the next room.
Right. Right. Also, too, do you think they're communicating to help us not just get through some emotional thing or to resolve some emotional issues, but to guide us, to kind of
Absolutely
give us a helping hand, right?
Many stories that are helping stories where people are helped with relationships, helped with safety issues. Slow down, people are told as they're driving. It's quite possible, I don't know this, and sounds like maybe you don't either, but it is possible that your husband gave the driver of that car a nudge so that he put his brake on just in time.
Yeah, it was very odd because he was starting to go and then stopped, and he seemed to be looking at something, and I kept saying, should I go? Should I not go? Should I not go? Go. Then I went, and then suddenly he went. And how he saw me that fast, I don't know. That was... So, yeah, there's some divine intervention there, and I think that was him, because I clearly heard him. And I've never heard him since. I don't know. And I have asked. I mean, has that happened to you as well, where you've heard stories, or it personally to you, where you have asked and then they don't answer?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's so much mystery in this of why particular people have experiences and others don't, or why one person comes and visits and another doesn't, or I don't know.
Well, what about the people, though, that are out there that write books and do shows on TV where they're talking to dead people every minute? What do you think of that?
Well, there are maybe some people who are capable of that. I mean, people think that I've had someone say, well, you must have a special gift because you've had all this contact and a little bit of other contact. I don't know. It's just what happened for me, and maybe someone else has a much stronger ability in that way. But I remember reading one book by a woman named Julia Asante, who is both scholar and psychic, and she, who has had... You can go to her to have make contact with a deceased beloved, says that she has run into a few dead people once in a while who just will not come, period. She doesn't know why. I don't know why.
And you know what? I love that she admits that and doesn't, at least make something up, like some
exactly.
People
There's some
out there that do, that can just say, I'm not getting a message. Sorry, Right. And we don't know why, because like you said, we don't know, you can't prove any of this, so we don't know. I only know because it happened to me and it's happened to you, and then it's happened to other people, and we know when you look in their eye, it's true, right?
Exactly. So
you can't, you go from there and say, well, you know what? Those people were there at that time. Who knows where they are now? Or they may be angels, they may be back on earth, they may be somewhere else, they may still help later. You don't know. You just go forward, But it makes you feel good to know that there's somewhere. You say in your book, too, that the message most people hear is they're okay.
Yep.
Right?
That's just that simple thing. I am okay. I am okay.
Yeah,
and it is so relieving to hear that.
Yeah, because really, honestly, see, in where I was born, again, not to dwell on that, but they wear white when people are dying. They don't. They wear black when people are born, and red's the wedding color. And this is an ancient culture that has been around for ever, long before America. And that's why, because when people die, they celebrate. They celebrate, and they put on white, and they say, oh my God, they've gone home. And when people are born, everyone dresses in black.
Wow.
So there's something
what
to
what
that.
do they say about that, about the black?
Because you have to come here. That's hard.
You have a point, you know.
Yeah, you got to come here, and that's hard. And this is something, it's solace. You know, it's deep. You're coming here. Your soul is entering this place, and you're going to have to grow and learn. And you may be here for 5 minutes, or you may be here for 120 years. We don't know, but you're here, and that's hard. And so they're in black. And then when you die, they're all in white going, yay. It's like, who knew, you know? And they've been doing that forever. That didn't just happen. That's been going on for centuries, you know? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, I think they know something, that they've touched on something. Look, Annie, this show is going way too fast, and I haven't even touched on half of the questions I have for you. But I'm already, I mean, we're halfway through. So I'm going to open up the lines to listeners calling in. But before I do that, how do they find you? Are you still doing research? Do you want to hear from people?
Sure. I have, if they go to my website, AnnieMattingley.com, and that's spelled ANNIE, M like in Mary, ATTINGLEY. That E is tricky. .com. There's a contact place in there, and if people want to connect with me, you can buy the book there too. But you can connect with me. You can tell me stories. I'm still collecting them. Because I do workshops and speak about this all the time. Even if it doesn't end up in a book, I end up sharing stories often.
Well, will you do another book? Would you do another book?
I don't know.
Okay, that's all right. That's
one. This book called me.
Yeah.
It asked to be done.
No, I get it.
Another one does, I will, but I don't know that yet.
No, but you still can hear from people, and you still are out talking about it, and it's fast. The stories in it are fascinating. I highly recommend it. The name of the book is called The After Death Chronicles, True Stories of Comfort, Guidance, and Wisdom from Beyond the Veil, and that's truly what it is, because it is stories of comfort and guidance and wisdom, which I love. And again, it's Annie Mattingley that's on the line with us. So I'm going to open the lines if anyone wants to call in now, 949-313-8880. If you have a question about someone who's passed, or just a story or anything you want to comment on, call now. We're happy to hear from you. And we can Annie can answer any questions you may have, because she's done more research on this than I have. I certainly haven't touched on half of what you've done and the kinds of stories you've heard. Did you talk to any scientific people at all? That's the wrong word, but you know what I'm trying to say, I think, right?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I just decided that I would just take the stance that none of this is provable, and people have the choice to accept it or not, or to reject it. I'm not in that realm of science. I know there are a lot of people who are trying very hard to prove these experiences, and some of them do things that, if, for instance, someone receives through after-death communication a piece of information that then that they couldn't possibly know, and they write that down and share it with someone else, and then later on find out that it's true, that's a scientific proof. I didn't hear any stories precisely like that. I heard a story, for instance, of a woman whose husband got up to answer the phone in the middle of the night, and while he's answering the phone, her father, who has just died, shows up at the foot of her bed and in a vision and says that he's all right. And then the husband comes back and with the message that her father has just died. But that's not, it's not like she had an audience who knew that. You know, she can't prove that she saw her father. And it's only her husband who heard her say that it happened. So I didn't hear any stories that
I know we can't put our finger, because I've even beyond the the whole people who have gone to other places thing. My father had a dream about me one night and then told me about the dream, and then 6 months later it happened, or a year. It's like, how did you figure? He said, I don't know. Anyway, we have a caller calling in, so we're going to add this caller to the group. Here we go. Hello. Hello, caller. Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, this is Patricia.
Hi, Patricia. Thank you for calling in tonight. How are you?
Good. This has been an interesting show.
Oh, good. Thank you. I appreciate you listening. We're on the line with Annie Mattingley. Do you have a question for her?
So, My mother was very troubled with my aunt, and my mother passed away in November. And I had a dream of my mother, like a light being shown on her face and a light being shown on my aunt's face. And my aunt is not dead. My aunt is very much alive, and I just wondered what that meant. My mother did not like my aunt when she died. 5 years before she died, she loved my aunt. But then there was a lot of issues.
All right. Annie, can you? Okay, go ahead, Annie. I just want to make sure you're there.
If I weren't on this show tonight, I would be at my dream group. And when I am in my dream group, we do not try to interpret other people's dreams. We use a phrase that comes from Jeremy Taylor, which is, if this were my dream. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to, if this were my dream and this were my mother and my aunt and they had disagreed beforehand, it does seem a reflection of the difficulties that were going on between them. But it also, there's a kind of an electrical aspect to lightning. And I wonder if that lightning can be considered damaging, but it also could be considered connecting. So maybe there is some healing that could be going on between the two of them. What do you think, Patricia?
I don't know. It just made me worry that my aunt was going to die soon when I saw them both together. I mean, that's what I felt in the morning when I woke up. I was afraid my aunt was going to die.
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt briefly, but was it lightning that you saw?
No, it was just like a light shone on them, like almost a flashlight on their face,
okay,
and all I saw was their faces.
Okay. Oh. So you saw their faces in light, like surrounded in light, like...
Yeah,
okay,
and just
different.
Their face.
So
there was nothing else happened around that.
Okay, so now I'll shut up and let Annie answer that, because I wondered about the lightning. Go ahead.
Yeah, I misunderstood. I'm sorry, but I think that if that were my dream, I would see that as a much more positive sign, which might or might not have to do with dying. Light is, to me, light is spirit, and so I would see the two people who had difficulties together surrounded by light, and that's an uplifting thing. So I would see it as a positive dream if it were my dream.
Okay.
But wasn't my dream. So
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, does that help, Patricia?
Yes, that does. Thank you.
Good. I do too. I think of that as a positive, maybe healing going on between the two of them, even from another realm. Even though your aunt is still alive, your mother's not. You said so. I would think that they maybe have made peace. That perhaps your mother has contacted her sister, and you're feeling that. And it's coming to you in a dream. I think it's awesome. Okay. Hope that helps.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for calling in tonight. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Appreciate you listening. Thank you. That was good,
Bye-bye.
Annie. I get that. You do a dream group, I think you mentioned.
I do.
Yeah?
I've been doing that for years.
Is that because that's the most common way for people to communicate from another realm?
No, because I was doing this long before Randy's death.
Oh, okay. Good.
I'm just fascinated by my dreams, you know.
Well, no, I've had many people on the show that are dream people that believe that you can solve many things in your dreams and can be guided and all kinds of things. So I think dreams are really important. I do.
I do too.
So I think that's fascinating. So that's good. Now, what about your grandchild? Has she had communication with her mother too?
Yes, she did, and that got started in a very different way than my experiences, which were totally spontaneous. One of the people I had interviewed highly recommended a particular psychic, and so I gifted Chelsea with an hour with that woman, and Chelsea is my granddaughter, and we arranged it that I would be present in the house when she had the session, not in the same room with her, and after the session, she burst out of the room, just her arms flung out, almost leapt out of the room, and she said, "Oh, Mom is happy," which was very different because my daughter was deeply depressed before her death, which was by her own hand. And so this was very relieving for Chelsea. But then the psychic also said that in the session, Randy said, "And I come to visit you as butterflies, hawks, and eagles." And without going into all of the experiences that we've had in those ways, this opened Chelsea to an awareness of contact with where butterflies would come and do surprising things, where hawks were showing up in her development where they had never been there before, and making their presence very known, and even a very powerful experience with an eagle when Chelsea got caught driving in a snowstorm. Started to snow while she was on the highway, and it was really heavy, and there were trucks who were jackknifing. It was nasty. And an eagle came and landed on a tree beside the van and leapt back up and then landed again. And it gave Chelsea a very deep feeling of being watched over and protected. And, of course, she had no problems in the drive. So these were powerful for her. They weren't as spontaneous as mine, but mainly I think the psychic just opened her to that possibility.
Oh, that's good. I mean, that's nice. That's important, really. I think, we're running out of time again. We're going to wind down now. If anybody has a quick question, I can take one more quick call at 949-313-8880. Otherwise, we're kind of going to wind up here. So, quick question. You've still got time to talk to Annie Mattingley, who's done an extensive amount of research on people who have passed to the other side or people who are no longer in their physical body is how she puts it, which I love. And I'm going to start saying that from now on. I'm going to change the other thing. But it's an excellent book, and I highly recommend it. It's called the After Death Chronicles. And I really like that that you're opening up to something that people don't talk about. Is there a message that you would like to pass on from this experience? What's the big major message you'd like to give people?
Well, there are a lot of messages, I guess, but if I have to narrow it down, I think I'd just like to go through the four main gifts that I see coming from after-death communication in hopes that people would understand what a huge gift this can be and try to open themselves more to receiving it. The first, of course, is comfort and grief healing. You were saying that most people say, "I'm okay." But the second is guidance and protection. People get very clear-cut advice and suggestions and help in how to maybe live their lives in a way when something they're struggling with, or how to keep themselves safe. Sometimes people's lives are very directly saved by contact that they have from deceased beloveds. And if there is unfinished business. We often think, oh, how awful this person is gone. We can't heal this anymore. That's not true. The very large unfinished business, like a lifetime of abuse from a parent, can be healed after death. So that's a major gift. And then just wisdom about our fears about death, about the afterlife. Mm-hmm. If we have this kind of contact in any form, we can come to a deeper peace about not only that person's death, but about our own death or the deaths that will come to others in the future.
Right.
And it tends to make us peaceful and serene to receive that kind of wisdom.
Right. I agree with that. I mean, it's amazing because, I mean, really, honestly, there's so many fascinating stories in this book, and I just highly recommend it because sometimes we don't want to even admit it to ourselves, and it opens us up to realize that, yes, that is them contacting us and not us being delusional or crazy or, just having a moment and missing somebody, that they can actually reach out. And I don't know, you asked questions because you asked Randy, if she could tell you about the afterlife, and she didn't answer you. So, and they know, I think that's kind of proof itself, because otherwise we would be getting anything we want. We're not, like I tried to talk to Jim again many times, never heard a word. That was it. It's not your time.
It's pretty huge how you did hear.
Yeah, loud and clear, and like he was there. I mean, I do remember when he first passed, I would feel him, but I would not see him or hear him, but I would feel his presence, like if I were.
Well, I'm glad for that.
But not after that message I got. I couldn't say, "Hey, Jim, what do you think? I should take that job or not take that job?" It wasn't like that because I didn't hear from him again at all.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it just is what it is, and it's very comforting. Like the subtitle is really a good one: True Stories of Comfort, Guidance, and Wisdom from Beyond the Veil, because that's what it is. It's just a veil, a very thin veil, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
Yes. So,
is.
And you're continuing the work as it is with this book, and then you're going to see where that takes you, right?
Exactly. I mean, it is so satisfying to me to hear people say, I read your book and then I realized what had happened with my mother or my husband or whoever. That it allows them to realize experiences that they had and not paid attention to. And to have people say that they're so comforted when they come to a workshop, that they're joy-filled instead of in misery. It's a very wonderful experience, so it feeds me, so I'm going to keep on doing it.
Good. And that's what I think we should all do. I think we just should follow the path that feels good, really. It sounds silly, but honestly, when you are feeling good, you are in the flow, and things open up that you don't even know might open up, but they just do, because that's how the universe works when you're in that flow. You're not fighting it. You're not angry about anything, because, I faced death very recently, actually. And I was diagnosed with last year. I had ovarian cancer, but a very rare form. And they're shocked that I'm still here. And the surgeon said, if you just have waited another few weeks, that would have been a huge difference. So I've really been paying close attention to life, death, what it means. Is it so bad to go? No. Is it so bad to stay? No. But there's a reason for everything. There's a rhyme and a reason to everything we do and each path we're on. Our soul.
It's just that we often can't recognize it till after the fact.
No, but I recognize it right now. My soul has a path. And my soul knows what it needs to do fulfill some lessons, as many as they can, here while I'm here. And if
Right.
I'm not here, then I'm done with those, so I'm going to do the best I can. And that's how I feel about people that pass. They fulfilled their soul's journey on this plane. And then that's kind of how I look at it, really. Even for myself right now, alive, I look at it that way. Like I can see from reading all these stories about how people are communicating, they're all okay, they're doing fine. They got done what they needed to get done here on this plane, and now they're in a different place and they're okay, right?
Right. They're definitely okay.
Yeah. Okay, with that, we're going to say you can find Annie Mattingley at anniemattingley.com, right? And it's ANNIEMATTINGLEY.com. And the book, again, is the After Death Chronicles, True Stories of Comfort, Guidance, and Wisdom from Beyond the Veil. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here tonight. It's been a great show. I could have talked to you for hours because there are so many stories in here, but I thought if I get into each one, we would be here all night.
I think you're right.
Yeah, we would. But I highly recommend this book. And if you've had a loved one that's passed recently and or not, just finding it is comforting to know and to hear other people talk about it. And I do congratulate you too, Annie Mattingley, for, really getting you got authentic people. You can tell the stories are real. They're not coming from some strange place. These are people that really felt it and knew. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I do. And it shines through because that authenticity is, you can't fake that. It's really real, and it's a beautiful book.
Thank you for recognizing it.
I do.
Well,
definitely.
You used a phrase earlier about, you said, knowing with my heart.
Yes.
And I think that's how you can recognize those stories, because you know with your heart.
I do, and that's why I had you on the show. I know with my heart this is a good book. So thank you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Annie.
You're most welcome.
Having
me on.
You take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. What a great show. I love her. Annie Mattingley, ANNIEMATTINGLEY. She's fabulous. The book is fabulous. The After Death Chronicles. You can get it anywhere. You can get it on Amazon, but you can certainly get it at AnnieMattingley.com. I am Servette Hassan at ServetteHassan.com, ServetHassan.com. We're winding down. I'm doing amazing things. I'm trying to get stuff started again with podcasts, et cetera, et cetera. We're getting there. I love to hear from you, though. Email me, Servette at ServetteHassan.com. I'm also available for private consultations. And I'm doing workshop. I did one today, so that's probably why I sound maybe a little more tired than usual. I did a workshop today at Awakenings in Laguna Hills. I'm going to be traveling and doing some more in Mountain View and a few other San Francisco, and I'm moving up north for not moving, but going up north to do some more workshops that way soon. So I'll let you know, or go on my website, ServetteHassan.com. I really appreciate you tuning in tonight. This has been a great show. We have some sponsors that I'm going to have some commercials on for at the end of the show. Up until now, they've been silent, but we'll put them on at the very end or the beginning of the shows from now on. And I appreciate them, and I love you all. I'm going to be doing blogging and podcasting and talking more about it. I touched on it tonight in the show, that I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer last year, and clear cell, which is the really rare form of that, and have come through, and I'm still here, and there must be a reason. So now I'm going to kick ass and show you what it is. So all of you tune in for that, because that's going to be a blog, a book, and everything else that you can ever imagine. And I'm working with the American Cancer Society, and I'm also working with the Cancer Schmancer people to push all of the helpful things we can do to prevent that from happening in the future, And onward and upward, that's what I got to say. Now, I'm going to say one more thing, though, because I always do at the end of the show, be you to the full, because that's what's beautiful. Being you to the full. Even Annie Mattingley said it. She's just being her authentic self. And she went with the people that she put into her book because she knew they were their authentic self. They were telling their truth. When you do that, you get happy. When you get happy, things happen. It's not the other way around. You don't get something and then you're going to be happy. Be happy, then it happens. Be yourself. Be you to the full. That's what's really beautiful. I love you all. And tune in next week. We'll have another great show for you. Take care. Good night. Bye.